My name is Tom Brannon. This is my son Todd. We come from 3 generations of serving in the U.S. Navy. My dad served in World War II on a destroyer. Matter of fact, we were all on destroyers. My dad was on DD-413, the USS Mustin, that served in the Pacific theater during World War II. I served in the 60s, mid-60s, aboard the USS Borderline, DD-881, during the Vietnam conflict. And I'll let Todd tell you.
I was in during the Persian Gulf. I was on USS Harry W. Hill, DD-986.
Okay.
Where do we go from here?
Yeah, just talk about, just any memorable
One
moments.
thing that I recall that was memorable during my stay, I actually, during the Vietnam thing, I was served in the Mediterranean, so it was during the Vietnam conflict, but I was never over in the Vietnam era. We were in the Mediterranean, and one thing that sticks in my mind was having to go swimming about 4:30 in the morning one time. There was a Greek ferry, which was actually it was more of a larger ship than what you'd think of a ferry, but it had sunk, and we were the Sixth Fleet was the closest thing to it, so we went and we actually found, I think, 2 or 3 bodies. I had to go in about 4:30 in the morning for one of the bodies to pick up, and it was a horrific thing for me anyway.
Mm-hmm. Was it kind of a reality check for you?
It certainly was.
Mm-hmm.
It was.
Like, man, I am really in the middle of this now, and I.
Yeah. There was 2 or 3 guys up on board standing there and they had lights shining down the water, and they're there with guns just in case any sharks or anything comes up. But you're still nervous,
Mm-hmm.
and but that was a horrific experience for me. And I can recall one other thing in the Caribbean. We were down off Guantanamo Bay, and this was close to Hurricane Beulah.
Mm-hmm.
Was in the neighborhood, so to speak, and we got a really terrific ride. It was a lot more than what a roller coaster does. It was an awful feeling, and so. But the way we were rolling and all, the man upstairs, he was with us.
Mm-hmm.
He helped out a lot. Back then, I was a whole lot younger, and I was there, and I guess religion's the furthest thing from my mind back then. I'm out having a good time and wanting to see the places overseas and all. But now you think back on it, and God played a big part in getting me through everything that we went through.
Even though you were not believing in Him necessarily at the time, He was still watching over you.
Yes, He was.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, He was.
That's good to know. All right, well, Todd, give us a few memorable experiences.
Well, one that sticks for me, I guess, would be I was on watch one night. We were on our way to Australia, actually, and I was on watch one night. It was about 2:30 in the morning, doing sound security watch, and walking down through the hallway on the port side, and I hear somebody from the engine room talking or yelling about a fuel rupture. So the first thing in my mind is fuel rupture. It must be big.
Mm-hmm.
So I run down, and we had a line that had ruptured going into the bilge. So about the only thing I could think of at the time, I mean, wasn't even really thinking, was I grabbed a bag that was there for stopping leaks, plugs, and I just grabbed one out of the bag and just dove into the bilge up to my neck and
Fuel.
finally got it stopped. And I think I spent probably about half the night in medical being detoxed from all the stuff on me. But that was a time that kind of stuck. And one other time I can definitely remember, I was on what they called the flying squad, which was, we were the first ones out at sea fire party. And if we couldn't get it under control, then they called general quarters, which was everybody on the ship. So probably about 4 o'clock one morning, the alarm goes off, flying squad. So we jump out, take off, we go to the helo deck. Well, the helo had basically caught fire on the back end, and there was flames up probably the end of the flight deck. So first thing, I mean, you can feel that heat, and you know you're out in the middle of the ocean. You don't have any place to go, you know. So first thing we start doing is just doing what we're trained to do, but the whole time you're doing it, it's like a lump in your throat. Things like that. And I mean, like he had said, you know, he was young. I mean, I was 23 when I went in. I think the difference in mine would be, I grew up with him and my mom instilling God into me,
right.
You know. So I think I had the grasp of, you know, what was there. But like he said, a lot of times that's the furthest thing from your mind when stuff's going on. But I mean, you always, once it's done, you've got the thing done, you know, you've got it put out, the fire put out or whatever. That's when it starts to flip through your mind, you know, that he was there.
God was with you all
yeah.
along. What are some of the sacrifices you felt like you had to make to serve, Tom?
Sacrifices.
Did you have to make any sacrifices in order to go and serve in the service?
I don't.
You didn't consider it that?
No, I really hadn't. I was, when I went into the service, one of my teachers in high school was a retired lieutenant commander in the Navy, and he's the one then that talked to me and a few others to join him. So I was actually in the Navy when I was like in the reserves when I was still doing my last year and a half of high school. I'd be going to reserve meetings up in Atlanta on 5th Street, and so when I came out of high school, I had my papers to go on into, you know, so I mean, it just went right on in.
So we'll talk about the sacrifice you may have made to have your son go into the service and serve. Is that a kind of a different situation there?
Yeah. Well, at that time he was out of school and he didn't really realize. I mean, he didn't know what he wanted to do. He was this and that,
right.
and I think he was working out at South Lake Malls, but and some Army or Marine guy got to talking to him out there, and he came home and he was telling me about it, you know. And I said, "Son, the furthest thing you want to do is try to go in the Marines, as thin and all as you are." And I said, "If you want to go, if you want to do time in the service, which I think it would be a good thing for you, you need to talk to a naval recruiter. I think you'd be much happier." And so he just came in one day and he said, "Dad," he said, "I talked to the naval recruiter," and he said, "I'm signed up." I said, "That fast?" He said, "Yeah." And then he had to go through the
MEPS.
yeah,
Mm.
and had a weight problem.
Mm-hmm.
So when he went down to for the weigh-in and all, he was underweight, and so
Usually you're over.
Yeah.
and he starts just pushing bananas down. I think my dad told him that.
Mm-hmm.
He just eating bananas and ate a bunch of them and drank a lot of water. And then at the weigh-in, he was like 2 pounds over what he needed to be.
Good job.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there were sacrifices you had to make, Todd, to serve?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's definitely, sacrifices. I mean, you leave a place you're comfortable with.
Right.
I mean, you grew up. I grew up here, and one day you're here, and then one day you're on a plane going to, well, for me it was Great Lakes,
Mm-hmm.
and pretty much you're saying bye to your, not permanently, but you're saying bye to your family and your friends.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to Chicago, they're here.
Mm-hmm.
I can talk to them on the phone, but it's not like an everyday thing like I always do. So, yeah, you sacrifice your family, time with them.
Mm-hmm.
So you do lose,
Mm-hmm.
And
those 4 years being at home with your family, but
Yeah, that was an empty place after he was gone. That room, it was quiet,
Mm-hmm.
So that you got to get used to. I told Paula, I said, "Do you hear that?" And she said, "What?" I said, "Hear how quiet it is." Yeah, she got to she'd get to miss it. Well, I did too, but
Mm-hmm. Well, are you thankful to the Lord, for the opportunity you had and for how He took care of you?
I'm thankful that He brought me all the way through it. I certainly am.
well, I know he was there with me even in boot camp. They get you doing these, you're not used to it, and you get to the place and it's constantly, okay, now you're going to run 1.5 miles. You're running 1.5 miles when you've never ran before in your life. So it's like, those times, there really was times in my head that I was telling myself, okay, this is, I'm doing it for me, but, it might sound funny, but I literally did say I'm doing this for my dad and my grandfather too. So,
Because you had that heritage.
I can do it.
Mm-hmm. And God was there and helped you run those miles and do all those push-ups.
He'll help me run many more too. So
yeah, that's good. Well, is there anything else y'all like to add?
That's about all I can think of.
All right.
That's good.